This episode is brought to you by Pentester Academy TV, the leader online cybersecurity education. Cybersec Community Chat.
Hello to all viewers, welcome to another episode of Cybersec Community Chat. I'm your host, Damien. Today we are pleased to have Dominic from Closerstill Media, an event director who manages cybersecurity conference portfolio, on board to this episode of Chit Chat session. Let's get our conversation started. Hello Dominic, it's a pleasure to have you on board to this episode of Cybersec Community Chat. I do know that you come from Closerstill Media and you manage the cybersecurity conferences portfolio. Will you be able to kick off this session? Will you be able to tell us more about your cybersecurity conferences that you manage and what do we expect from it?
For sure. Yeah. Hi, Damien. Look, really, thanks for inviting me along for this. You and I have known each other for a while now. So yeah, it's great to be, for me to come on board and kind of share what we do and obviously introduce myself to your community. Like I said, I work for Closerstill Media. We are a B2B events organizer, but my focus has been for the last 5-6 years now has been on cybersecurity and organizing Cybersecurity World, building our community here in Singapore and in the region. Engaging with vendors, solution and service providers for cybersecurity, industry associations, end users, everyone that kind of makes up the cybersecurity world, essentially. So yeah, I've been here in Singapore for about 7 years now, so cybersecurity is my work, but also a keen interest as well. I don't have an engineering background or a tech background, but it's an interest now, and so I have an interest and I know basic understandings of what's happening in the cybersecurity world.
We do know that Covid-19 has been raging for the past 2 years, and doing B2B event, face-to-face event has been quite tough in a lot of cybersecurity conferences platform. How do you manage and organize the conference, till date?
Like you said, it's been a challenge to say the least, and I think it's affected everyone. Everyone's been affected regardless of what work you're doing, and some industries have done pretty well from it. And the MICE industry, events industry such as mine, has had to adapt, has been massively affected. And there's been obviously, people have utilized other models of, engaging with their communities. So from our perspective, we're set up to be a physical event company, hiring a venue, bringing lots of people together. And obviously, with COVID-19, that has been not very easy to do. Obviously, we want everyone to be safe. So, we've adapted. Last year, we had to, in Singapore and the rest of the company, we had to put a halt to our physical events, and we had to kind of re-pivot and look at, how we can continue our brands. And we took a slightly different, in Singapore anyway, we're a company that has offices in the UK, we did have one in Hong Kong as well, and in France and the US, so different markets of us with different things. In Singapore, we took the view that we weren't going to pivot to doing virtual events because that's not really, we're not set up. We're not a digital company. We have a digital offering. We can engage with our clients digitally. But when we're trying to replicate a large exhibition and conference where in 2019 we had over 20,000 people come to our event series. Trying to replicate that kind of engagement online is a challenge, and wasn't quite what we're set up for, what our clients want. However, we, in other parts of the business, we have run, the virtual events, running networking online and running the conferences, and we've had some really good engagements in that regards. But for us, we were like, okay, well, let's hold still here in Singapore, and we did some fireside chats, some community engagements, similar stuff to what we're doing at the moment online, and that worked really well. But what we were very aware of is that, and a lot of event companies have tried to replicate a physical environment online, and that has been a challenge to a lot of companies. And so we were quite aware of that. So we personally, in Singapore office, we didn't go that platform, but I know that a lot of other event companies have. And then, Singapore itself has been very different to other places in the world. That fortunately the government here, have been very cautious and very pragmatic in opening up, and have allowed some physical events to happen. And that we did engage with that as well. So just for smaller audiences, and we did a one-day summit last year, earlier on this year, called the Smart Cybersecurity Summit. So we just had to, I guess, adapt to the circumstances that were put in front of us. Really, I think, like all companies that had to, adapt to COVID-19. It's, things don't stop completely. We also want to engage with each other and learn. And obviously, with cybersecurity, has been one of the I guess the pivot to everyone working from home has really changed the perimeter that the security teams are trying to manage at the moment, and that's caused a lot of headaches. Everyone digitizing, so there's been a lot to talk about, a lot of things that people want to. My conversations with IT security professionals, there's a lot to understand, a lot to learn from each other. So given that opportunity to meet face to face, a lot of people were very keen on that. Or as we've seen, they're doing the virtual engagements.
It's very interesting, as you mentioned that your organization doesn't emulate by putting your physical events into virtual events, but you break it down into smaller community events such as fireside chats, and webinars. Does that help in terms of your community engagement, and how has the community grow from all these small parts of events that you guys created?
I believe so. It's 100%. Look, we're all social beings at the end of the day. We want to engage with people. There's a lot to be. We want to talk. We want to share our knowledge. We want to understand. There's a lot, and if we can't meet people physically, then this is a means to an end. And if the pandemic had hit maybe 10, 15 years ago, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing as easy. So there's something to be said, a blessing, for the technology that we have at the moment, because we are still able to kind of develop and build our communities and stay relevant. And if we hadn't done those these kind of smaller engagements, then people forget you. Like, who are you guys? What did you do? You used to do something. You used to do a physical show or something like that. And so you need to, like with any business and any community, you need to stay in people's eyes. You need to stay relevant. You need to, for me, the world of IT security changes so quickly. I mean, there's still the same old vulnerabilities. There's still the same, issues that people have, in staying secure. But the technology is changing all the time. There's always something new to be discussed. So it's really important to kind of stay visible and to continue to engage, whether it's unfortunately not being able to do the large trade kind of thousands of people trade events. That's not possible at the moment, but there's other ways of engaging such as this that you guys have been doing.
Yeah, we also last week I do understand that you guys have just announced postponed of Cybersecurity World Asia due to some regulation change in Singapore. That how's the feeling of the community, from their perspective about the postponement, and now we don't have another face-to-face event that's coming up.
Yeah, it's. I think there was a lot of disappointment where everyone was working so hard to make it happen, and the regulations that the government have given everybody to work with. They do work, but it's scale. They work for small engagements, and I know that I know ISACA did a small community engagement a few weeks last week or the week before, and that these smaller engagements are fine. But when we're set up to run something a lot larger, the regulations that we had to work with just weren't gonna give the engagement that people want. And then also, that Singapore in itself, we're on a roadmap to the endemic phase, and we're fortunate that we're a very high vaccination. I think it's over 80% at the moment, which is fantastic. But we're not quite there yet. And so I think that taking all of these things into consideration, it was the right thing to do for us to postpone another year. And generally, most of the investors and sponsors understood the situation. Obviously, they're disappointed. They want to meet their clients. They want to meet their prospects face to face. The speakers, we had some fantastic speakers. They understand, and we will continue to engage in other ways. And so, for us, okay, we've got another year to our big event, but I'm again running a small summit, Smart Cybersecurity Summit. It will be in April the 28th. Again, it's not going to be thousands of people, but it's going to be 300 end users, a small exhibition, really kind of content focused, one-day conference, and we're excited for that. So that's the planning now. We'll also have, there's discussions at the moment of there's some other smaller engagements that we might do, but it seems certainly in Singapore, come the new year, it's going to be a different landscape. We hope, for us to kind of meet more people and do the kind of more normal things that we used to do. It's different. So in the UK, we're running events. The dynamic of the government and what people are able to do is different. We're running events there for 6,000, 10,000 people. And with not the same regulations that we have in Singapore, very different. So we're getting there. I think Singapore will be different to what's happening in Indonesia and Malaysia and elsewhere in Southeast Asia, where they haven't got the infrastructure, we haven't got the high vaccination rate. So, we're not out of this until everyone's out of this, really. But for now, we'll just take what's happening in Singapore. Yeah, I'm optimistic for next year. The feedback has been generally positive that people can't wait to meet people again. I would prefer this conversation to be happening in a physical environment, but for now we make do with technology.
Yeah, I think you gave quite a good pointers and some good response to what you thought about it. With so much uncertainty and hurdles going on in COVID-19, your personal perspective, okay, not your company. Do you think that for future conferences you will see more of a hybrid model and less of face-to-face?
My personal view is, and just from what I've experienced and the conversations I'm having with the vendors, for example, who are investing, and the end users as well, the people that are actually attending, is that I think that the technology will allow the event organizers and people to engage, certainly in more of a 360-degree approach, so before and after, the technology will allow people to kind of communicate with each other, engage. But when it comes down to actually meeting face to face, I guess it depends on the landscape, the geography where you are. If it means that next year, we still can't travel internationally, then of course, there's going to be kind of hybrid models that will engage that kind of facilitation of people being able to log on from the US or elsewhere. Then it makes sense. But our thing is, so there's been events that I've heard about and I've spoken to people about where they've run simultaneously a physical and a virtual at the same time. And for those at the physical event, particularly if you're doing say for example an exhibition, where you've got vendors who are got products and services that they want to talk about, and people come on their booth and talk about and discuss. When you're trying to replicate that online, and you're giving people sometimes the opportunity to not come to a physical event, then it is less engagement. That's what I'm trying to say. So my personal view is one or the other. But if you are going to do a virtual element, my view is that you run it either, after or before. I wouldn't necessarily, my view is do it at the same time, because unless it's a conference, unless it's just purely, content driven, then sure. But when you're trying to do an exhibition of sorts where, people are displaying their products and services, I just haven't seen how that works on a virtual environment. And if you get people the opportunity, I just don't think they will necessarily engage with people. I think, my view is that I think that there is a place for technology, definitely with events, but it's how you use it and at what time.
Thanks, Dominic, for your take on that. Because event organizer always struggle hybrid, face-to-face, or full virtual. I think you give really thoughts about different buckets of how events are supposed to be run, and it is kind of stressful now for all event organizers to how they want to run an event in a very safety manner. You have been running a security event for last 7 years or probably more, and you definitely have been in this industry for so long. What kind of security trends you are seeing while organizing the conference for this year? Usually I always ask practitioners about that, but event organizers might also see certain trend that has been ongoing.
So I think that there's a few things, and part of it is, over the years of doing events and speaking to vendors, there's been kind of trends of technology that are coming through, and buzzwords, for example. A lot of the moment is zero trust. Okay, that seems to be a buzzword that a lot of vendors are talking about. It's maybe the same solution they've had for a while, but they're using zero trust as a term and want to talk about that and what that actually means. That was something. I think one thing that has come up more and more is the emergence of cyber and physical environments. So the IoT or the OT. So that seems to be something that's coming more and more prevalent, particularly here in Singapore. The government have and are implementing a smart nation agenda, which obviously with the move of the port here and what that entails, more and more technology being used in physical environments. So that seems to be something that a lot of the tech guys want to talk about, and is definitely a key theme that I've noticed. Again, one of a thing that a lot of people want to talk about, and there's a big headache, is still cloud security. That thing, and ransomware is always, seems to be, it's always there. People always want to talk about it, and we've seen all these things that are happening within the, in media with all these cyber attacks. Those were some of the things that I think a lot of the vendors wanted to talk about this year, and some of the subjects I've seen.
I think it's kind of some of interesting insights from your perspective. Cybercrime as a service has been rising topic or trend that is ongoing in security.
I think that the as mentioned earlier on before, the move to everyone working from home has completely changed I guess there's two things. It's changed the infrastructure that the cybersecurity teams are used to kind of managing. Everyone's working off VPNs, everyone's working from home. But then there's also the people, because people generally are the weakest link, and from my understanding of security, that and trying to change that culture of how people are aware of cybersecurity and what they do. I had one of my guys in the team just doing we have an online training course everyone has to do, and she was reading about phishing emails, and we were talking about that, and it seems these things are getting more and more sophisticated, more and more dangerous and crippling, basically. But it's getting harder to I guess see and interpret that actually this is something that's fake. So I guess it's always a challenge.
It is always a challenge. Working from home from security perspective has been one of the key questions that I usually ask my guests as well. And I think you also nail it. That's what work from home has been kind of a thing. For the past 2 years, I would say. With COVID-19 that's ongoing. And before we wrap up the whole conversation, I have a last question for you. So
sure.
When is your next conference?
So the next one is April the 28th at Marina Bay Sands. I mentioned it earlier on, the Smart Cybersecurity Summit, and it will be different to our larger trade shows. This is going to be for an end user audience. Those who are on the front line, so to speak, those who are an IT security professional, whether they are IT security manager, director, CISO, engineer. So it'll be a conference with a small exhibition here at Marina Bay Sands. I'm just at the moment, putting together the plan, trying to work out the agenda. If anybody has any ideas of interesting topics, I know you have a huge community there. We will have a call for papers. I'm always interested to hear from those guys who are actually in the trenches, so to speak. What is interesting to talk. What are some of the new themes and new areas that people need to be aware of. So yeah, that's the next one. And then again, we'll be October 2022 on the 12th and 13th for Cybersecurity World. So yeah, it's we've got a bit of a way off, but like all events, it takes time to make sure that we are doing something that will be relevant for the community. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on now for the next few months.
Thank you, Dominic, for all the insights, and to help us better understand an event organizer running a cybersecurity portfolio. And we, thank you so much for creating platform for us to meet, for all the security community people to meet up and to share their knowledge and their wisdom in your show. And we definitely will, share your call for paper when the video release, so that people can submit.
Excellent.
Yeah, and stuff like that. And thank you once again for coming on board to the show. And we do hope all the viewers enjoyed the conversation between me and Dominic. And we do look forward to see the next episode of Cybersec Community Chat. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.